Does White House have any concerns about a similar protest happening here in the nation's capital?
I think what I would just reiterate here is that we know that requirements work. We have not seen a disruption as it relates to requirements to the industry. Where we have seen disruptions has been related to these convoys and protests. Now, everybody can peacefully protest. We fully support that, but it's important to note where the disruption is occurring.
Well, even at CNN, they are sounding the alarm on the convoy and the problem it could pose for President Biden.
This started as a protest against that vaccine mandate. It has turned into so much more. This isn't something the Biden administration can ignore, especially given those bridge crossings. There could be impacts to the supply chain between the United States and Canada.
The Wall Street Journal editorial board puts it this way. The lesson for the COVID-19 police is that when you've lost even Canadians, arguably the most law-abiding people on the planet, you've lost the political plot. Time to adopt a new strategy more tolerant of the need to return to life, not dominated by pandemic fear and government commands. Will Cain, co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Will, I want to get your initial reaction to the idea that this could be coming here in the way of the White House ignoring yet another crisis, but also Americans are fed up.
Harris, I find this issue the most fascinating thing taking place in the news cycle. And you hear me hesitate there because I'm trying to decide whether or not to say the domestic news cycle, the American news cycle. What I think this is actually reflective of, or the perfect illustration of, is something taking place across Western civilization, and it reveals our most pronounced or inherent divide, Harris. It's not racial. It's not black or white. It's not political. It's not Republican or Democrat. It truly is, to anyone that thinks this sounds pandering, it truly is, and I think it's only going to become more so obvious, the divide between the common man and the elite. What you see happening in Canada is the rising up of the blue-collar worker, the common man. These people are not anti-vax. These people are not necessarily Republicans. These people are not necessarily conservative. These are people that believe that individuals should retain the right of choice. And they are resisting a top-down approach to their life from the elites who tell them how they should live, what they should think, what they're allowed to hear, and what they should submit to in terms of mandates. That's not limited to Canada, Harris.
Right.
That could easily come right here to the United States, take place in the UK. We see it on the streets across Europe. And here's the thing, Harris. Ask yourself this. How does it end? We can discuss where does it go. Does it come to the United States? How does it end?
Look at Canada for some of that answer, Will, if you will. They're winning. I mean, when I woke up and read headlines the last couple of days, I said, well, the truckers are winning their argument. And by the way, this idea that you describe, yes, it's spreading around the world, but I sort of see America as some of the originators of that kind of freedom. I mean, it's inherent in who we are, having not always had it. One of the organizers of the Freedom Convoy told Fox News Digital she's downright disgusted by the liberal media's coverage of the protest, although we showed you that little clip from CNN saying the White House had better stop ignoring these truckers. Another trucker said, it seems like everything is a cult or an insurrection or an assault on democracy these days. I don't understand how people fighting for their freedom can be an assault on democracy. Your reaction?
Nor do I. Nor do I. These truckers have been called every insult under the sun, from fringe to far right to hateful to a cult. And Harris, I think you're right that the United States is sort of the original freedom-loving population. But we are not leading the way right now when it comes to resisting top-down elite mandates. Right now, we're being led by Canadian truckers. And so let's play this out. How does it end? Think about this. Think about the power the common man has. Think about the power these truckers have. What will Justin Trudeau do eventually? Will he send in the military? There's not enough police. There's not enough Ottawa police nor tow truck companies. And by the way, it sounds like the tow truck companies are resisting hauling away these truckers' trucks.
Yeah.
Right. You better have a big tow truck. So what is he going to do? Send in the military to break up this protest? And even at that, even if he did that, Harris, then how does he pick up the slack in the supply chain? Will the military then deliver the goods and services across Canada that these truckers are supposed to be doing on a daily basis? This is the power. You know, when you bring it back to the United States of America, We do not know the power that we hold over the people that would like to lord their power over us. Ultimately, these elites are a minority, an extreme radical minority, certainly in their ideas. But ultimately, still in the United States of America, the power rests with the people. It'll be interesting to see when American people lead the way.
Well, look, everybody has a visceral reaction to that grandpa, that great-grandpa being hauled off by the Canadian police. And you say, well, what is Justin Trudeau going to do? Well, if he does too much of that, it could get really interesting. Because those truckers are honking their horns. Now they've been told they can't. I mean, they're being silenced. You know what? Tammy Bruce and I got into this, Will, and I thought of you yesterday as she was speaking, because I've heard you make a similar point. I want to get into it now. She made the point about the Freedom Convoy protest in comparison to the protests here in the United States. Just watch and listen.
I think that we saw the inkling of that with the school board meetings and parents.
Yes.
That was the same dynamic without trucks, where Americans were saying very vocally, enough is enough. And that can and will grow. And this has been inspirational for people. They're seeing it. Americans, truckers, the supply line, of course, they remain under attack. I have to say, we had the Great Resignation. We have people who are not going back to work. That might also be, interestingly, a very quiet protest that is occurring.
Will.
Yeah, and so here's what I think is so fascinating. This will take us back to the original question you asked me. This dynamic between the average American, the average citizen of the Western world, and these elites will become, Harris, will become undeniable. Do you think all those parents in Virginia that were called domestic terrorists vote Republican? Probably not yet. The point is, this crosses partisan divides. Anybody that dares stand up to this elite monolithic groupthink that tolerates no dissent is called a domestic terrorist, is called, when you're a trucker, you're called a cultist. You're Joe Rogan and you advocate for Bernie Sanders and you're called a propagandist and purveyor of misinformation, and your voice must be silenced. It's going to become undeniable. It's becoming undeniable. And I think that, I think we've never seen, at least in my lifetime, this type of flex from those who think they have power against those that actually have power.
This type of flex. What Tammy Bruce said about the Great Resignation, there's 38 million people who quit their jobs by October of last year. She said that's the equivalency to a silent protest that could build. Great to have your comments on that. Let's get to this. Big backlash as the Biden administration may be looking to place hundreds of migrants under part-time house arrest. Well, I call them illegal immigrants because they're here illegally. And now, of course, if they're putting them under house arrest, they're making that point. They say it's much cheaper than holding them at detention facilities, as illegals are flooding across the border in record numbers. Reuters is reporting pilot programs will begin in Houston, Texas, and Baltimore, Maryland, with 100 to 200 single adults under house arrest in each city. Detainees would be required to be in their home from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., with exceptions for work and extraordinary circumstances. Critics, such as the Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich, say this is a joke.
It's obvious that the Biden administration is systematically trying to not only dismantle ICE, but essentially eliminate our entire southern border. And the taxpayers, hardworking middle-class taxpayers, are going to subsidize this progressive left social experiment. And unfortunately, it's going to be all of us are going to pay the cost.
Will, talk to me about what the AG is saying there. What kind of a social experiment is this?
One that they say is driven by compassion. So under this house arrest, you point out, Harris, supposedly it will cost $6 to $8 a day to house a migrant on house arrest versus $142 a day in a detention center. These migrants apparently would be confined to their home from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. Makes you wonder, what do they do all day? And I think you find the answer pretty quickly as they go out and work and live the life that they actually came to the United States to live. But here's what's funny about that. Supposedly that's driven by compassion, a more compassionate approach to this than, for example, they say, the Trump administration. But it's interesting who they're compassionate toward. And I think this is inseparable from America's rising crime crisis. You seem to be compassionate towards those that break the law, not for those who suffer at those who are breaking the law, the hands of those who are breaking the law. And by the way, just like a permissive parent who constantly meets a rule-breaking child with compassion, you only are going to get more of it. You're going to get more illegal immigration. And thus, you're going to have less compassion towards Americans who lose jobs, who suffer from crimes from illegal immigrants, or in the rising crime crisis, suffer higher rates of murder. Who exactly is the recipient of your compassion?
Well, and we've seen the busloads of adult males mostly and some women, not families, being dropped off in cities. I mean, this accelerates that with legitimacy now. Yes, they're here illegally. Yes. We're going to house them. We're only going to keep track of them in the sleeping hours. And who knows if they're keeping court dates? They weren't keeping them before, but now you've legitimized whatever it is they're doing, and you've given them time away from that dwelling to go to work. So you've normalized their illegal behavior. It seems counterintuitive
illegal immigration
to a nation with borders. We'll move on.
Yep.
Will, great to have you in focus today. Thank you.